Buenas tardes, Puebla. Estoy aquí para compartir algunas ideas y una historia con ustedes. Desafortunadamente, no puedo hacer esto en español, pero espero que disfruten. Oops. My name's Alex Wulff. I'm a student at Harvard studying electrical engineering, and I am a maker. The maker movement is this incredible trend that we've seen in recent years that basically embodies everything that it means to be a human, to be creative, and to have ideas. The maker movement represents people taking their ideas and putting them into practice all around you to change people's lives. And that's really what's so special about humanity and human ingenuity, our incredible capacity to take ideas, to take concepts, and to use them to change people's lives. Now, I actually became a maker through something completely unrelated to technology, which I'm going to be talking about. I became a maker through food. Now, when I was in middle school, I really liked food. And I also liked the idea of taking recipes that I found online, taking things that I saw, taking ingredients in my own kitchen and making something out of them. And as a middle schooler, the very first things I made were dishes, like these sweet potato fries that you see behind you. I started cooking right as I entered middle school. And throughout the course of my middle school career, which is about a year and a half, or 2 years, I made recipes. Now, I started with very simple things, and later on throughout my career, I moved on to more complicated dishes. And as I made these dishes, I just generated a large collection of recipes that I wanted to share with the world. And so the way that I did this was through technology. What you see behind me is the very first technological thing I ever created. It's a website that allowed me to share my recipes with the world. For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to have red text and black text on a dark red background. And I guess for some reason, I thought it looked good when I was in middle school. But it got the point across. It allowed me to share my creations with the world. And that's what I thought was so special. I now had a means by which I could share my recipes with anyone who had access to the internet. Anybody who had a computer, a phone, a tablet, basically anything. And I really loved the concept of having people be able to take my recipes, put them into practice, and make them a reality. Now, throughout the course of making this website and putting recipes on it, I actually fell more in love with the technological side of things rather than the cooking side of things. So the next thing I wanted to do was make mobile apps, simply because I was still in middle school and I thought it would be cool to tell my friends that I made iPhone apps. And so that's what I did. I started by basically just watching tutorials online about how anyone can create a mobile application. So the very first things I created were simple applications that just displayed text. But throughout the course of my application development career, much like I did with cooking, I learned and I adapted my skill set such that I could create better and better products. So, like I said, the first things that I created were simple. But I later moved on to actually making applications for businesses in my local community to help them address problems, such as getting their message out to people, simplifying signups for practices, and other things like that. So I basically learned the value of being able to take an idea and adapt it to fit someone's needs, and adapt a mobile application such that anyone can use it and anyone can download it. And I also learned the value of how important it is to make a product and make it usable and accessible for everyday people. So later on, I basically got bored with mobile applications, and I got bored with websites because I was missing something. There's some innate quality about food in that you can take it and you can mold it with your hands and you can make it into something delicious and something that you can put in your mouth, something that you can feel, something that you can experience, and something that can impact people's lives. And so this is what drove me towards hardware. Hardware is the perfect intersection between the digital and the physical worlds. Hardware involves incredible software challenges that face, everyday people, and that anyone can take their brain and apply their own knowledge to solve. But at the same time, hardware is physical. I can sit down at a workbench with parts all around me and combine these parts in a meaningful way to create something physical, to create something that people can actually use to impact their lives. And so this is what finally drove me towards hardware. So when I started making hardware devices, I started big. I wanted to make some big robot that could, guide someone through a city street or do something like that. And I was overwhelmed. I had no idea how to do this. I tried to make very large robots and things like that ended up just falling apart or even almost catching fire sometimes. And then I tried to go towards the opposite end of the spectrum. I tried to make very small devices just because I thought that would be easier too. But small devices require this, basically a good knowledge of how to do complicated soldering techniques, how to make devices very small, worry about thermal distribution and other things like that. So eventually I settled in the middle, which is where I recommend anyone start if you want to create an electronics project. So the very first successful projects that I created were medium-sized. I created everything from a prank vibrating cup to this little device that you can stick in someone's office or room or whatever, and it'll beep for a very short period of time, every 20 minutes. So it basically just annoys the heck out of them, and they can't find it just because it's so small. So as you can see, a common theme amongst my first projects were just to basically annoy people just because I thought it was funny. This was about when I was leaving middle school and entering high school at this time. So I did this for about a year, and I gained actually a pretty good amount of knowledge just making pranks like this to annoy my friends and annoy my family, etc. But after a while, I wanted to actually impact people in a positive way, not just in a negative way by annoying them. And this is what drove me to create my very first impactful project, which I call Haptotech. Haptotech is a wearable system for the blind and visually impaired, which essentially allows them to navigate their environment as a supplement to traditional needs. So, for example, I built these little sensor nodes. They're about the size of a few quarters that blind and visually impaired people can place all over their bodies. And as they move around their environment, these sensors are continuously tracking their environment. They're tracking people, they're tracking objects in their path, they're tracking the distances to the blind and visually impaired person's environment, and other things like that. And then these little sensor nodes are communicating with one another. They're sending data packets back and forth to basically get a 3D spatial representation of a user's surroundings without the user actually needing to see it. So this was the first project which I actually got to see solve a real problem that I witnessed in my community. And I got to see the joy on blind people's faces as they actually used my devices to navigate indoor environments with ease. So after creating this project, I wanted to do something even more complicated. And this is what drove me towards a project called CastMinder, which I'm actually still working on today. CastMinder is a smart orthopedic cast and splint monitoring system. It's essentially designed to detect problems that might arise inside of an orthopedic cast or splint. The majority of these problems, or the most severe of these problems, is something called compartment syndrome, which is where swelling of your arm or whatever your broken region is can actually be cut off because of the cast around your arm, which can lead to a loss of circulation, which can then lead to cell death or other nasty complications that you don't want. And other secondary complications include things like skin infection, skin irritation, moisture inside the cast, and more. So I built a system to essentially detect these problems and alert patients or physicians or other medical professionals to them before they're at risk of becoming a problem. So this system is comprised of a sensor node that's embedded inside the cast or splint, and then the sensor node continuously collects data from the cast environment and sends it to a mobile or an iPhone application that I developed. Then this iPhone application can basically analyze the data and determine if a patient is at risk of developing a complication. And this system is kind of the culmination of all of my ideas. It's the culmination of all the work that I've put into making for basically most of my life. And throughout this system, I was able to use mobile applications. I was able to use websites. And I was able to combine my ideas in a meaningful way. So now I'm going to walk you guys through the process of how I go about creating my own projects and how you can do the same. The first thing is obviously coming up with an idea. You need to identify a burning question in your community, a problem that you see. And the easiest way to do this is to just walk around your own community and identify problems that you might see and basically think of solutions as to how you can address them. When I'm coming up with an idea for something, I'll just go for a walk, and then I'll sit down for 10 minutes. No distractions, no cell phone, no computer, no nothing. I'll just sit down and think for 10 minutes about the problems that I saw and about the ways that I can use my knowledge to address these problems. So after you come up with an idea, making it is the next step. And I make most of my projects through something called the Arduino platform. Arduino is this company that basically took the concept of something called a microprocessor or a microcontroller and made it accessible to people all around the world. Now, these microprocessors are basically little computers that you can use to interface with sensors, with components, with parts that you see around you. And the best part about companies like Arduino is that they're taking something that somebody would ordinarily need 10 plus years of industry experience to program, and they're taking it and they're making it accessible for people regardless of their age, regardless of their race, regardless of where they live, regardless of how much money they make, and they're making it usable for everyone. So you can use all of these open source technologies that companies have developed, and you can take these technologies and you can help them to make your own ideas a reality. Using technologies like this, you can basically just go about starting your idea from prototype to completion. Now, you're obviously going to encounter so many roadblocks along the way. And with making, it's literally these roadblocks that teach you how to make something. I encountered so many problems when I was creating all these devices that you saw. Probably for every single finished device that I ever created, there's probably 20 or 25 devices just sitting brushed under a work table somewhere that didn't work the way I wanted them to, as a result of these roadblocks. But once you encounter how to get around these roadblocks, you actually just develop this innate solution to that certain technical problem, which you can then later apply to your projects later on down the road. So storing this knowledge that you develop, storing these concepts, and storing everything in your brain, and using it to create these connections in meaningful ways to help you solve your problems is what making is all about. Now, the last step for any project is packaging it. If you want to share your creation with the world, if you want other people to actually use your product or use your idea and for that product to impact their lives, what you need to do is you need to package it in a way that they can understand it, that they can make it. And the way I do this is basically just uploading my projects on plenty of websites that people can use to basically download the instructions and see how to make the project itself. A lot of this revolves around taking a good photo of the project and writing a good title, just so that people are interested. And then later on, documenting the project in a way that someone who has very little technical background can understand. So lastly, I just want to bring this back to the maker movement as a whole. Like I've said, and like you've seen in this presentation, the maker movement embodies everything that's great about human ingenuity. There's really no difference between you and anyone else in the audience when it comes to your ideas. Anyone can take your own ideas, anyone can take concepts and put them into practice and make something incredible out of them. And that is the maker spirit. The maker spirit is taking your ideas and making things a reality. Now, you don't even have to have any special technological knowledge. You can make things that are art-based. You can make artistic creations that challenge people's assumptions, that challenge the way people think about the world. You can make delicious food that just gives people this incredible experience, that gives people this whole new perspective on life just as a result of a culinary experience. And lastly, you can just make words. You can write something. You can write something that challenges someone's preconceived notions about the world. You can get up on a stage like I'm doing right now, and you can speak about something. The maker movement is about taking your ideas and helping other people take their own ideas and put them into practice to change the world. Now, I'm just going to leave you with my email and my website if you want to see more of my projects. And finally, I will leave you with this. What will you do to make your ideas a reality? Thank you.